meeting of the Greenways Open Space Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order promptly at 7:00 p.m. on January 24th. So at this time, could we please rise and let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And again, Happy New Year to everyone. And thank you for coming out on this inclement night. I'll do the roll call at this time. St. Pierre is excused. Urbani?
Here.
Weeks is excused. Geist?
Here.
Frucci? Need to talk to her. Ms. Phillips?
Here.
Okay. Loveday?
Here.
Bloetscher?
Present.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda as presented? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda
So moved.
as presented. Motion by Mr. Bonney, second by Mr. Bloetscher. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? We will have a presentation at our next meeting in February. I do want to commend Zoe Loveday for putting together the PowerPoint presentation on the status of some of the signs that we will talk about. And what we may do is add to the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll be looking at that. But again, there are no other presentations that we're aware of this evening. If you would take a minute or two and look at the minutes provided by Secretary Geist of November 7th. If there are any additions or deletions to the,
Bill,
yes.
I'd like to ask about Pam Prucci. She has not been here since I've been on the board. Is she
Yes.
still an active member? Or?
Well, we do know that she was on a world tour at one point in time.
Was.
And, but I also know that I think she has returned, and I have left some phone messages for her and they have not been returned, but we need to follow up on
Okay,
that.
find out what's.
But again, I know part of our bylaws under the, Mr. Bloetscher said that he would be contacting some family members to determine what's going on in that
Okay,
regard.
great.
So, yes,
That would-
but I agree.
Clarify that would be
Okay,
good.
and
Thanks.
she is a liaison for the Island Beautification Committee.
Right.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 7th.
Move to approve the meeting minutes of the November 7, 2023 meeting.
That's sometimes hard to say.
It is.
Okay, there is a motion on the table for approval of the meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Phillips. Is any discussion? All those in favor of the approval of the November 7th meeting minutes? Got me doing it now. Okay, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Good. Okay, if we take a look at our discussion items, we actually have been talking about the first item for quite some time. I do know, like in late October, early November, that we had put a call out to the schools, GROSSE Township schools, to find high school students that might be the leaders for the environmental awareness group that was there, but also that would serve as a liaison team to the schools. And they were both young ladies were highly recommended by their teachers. They were interviewed by Dr. Carter, the new principal, and Ms. Phillips and I also interviewed the two students that were involved. And so I'd like to welcome Caitlin Robinson, who is a freshman, and Alicia Shelton, who is a sophomore from the school. One of the difficulties that we know that we've had with students sometimes is that they have such busy lives, okay, in terms of their commitments to not only to their studies, but also to their other involvement in extracurricular activities. So that's why we certainly have Zoe Loveday here, who is our liaison to the off-island residents and to the students, but also we felt that what we could do is bring two students from the school to serve as a liaison team, K through 12, to the schools. And so both Caitlin and Alicia agreed that they would serve in that capacity. We also know that we're trying to look for some continuity in this. And what we would like to do is extend their term of service from, let's say, January as of this time to January, for a full year, January 2025, with the possibility of re-upping. And since they are underclassmen, at least at this time, at least just in name only, they're very active and involved. And so we would like to at least bring that forward as as the new liaison that we will act on shortly. Any further comment or question on that?
No, except I was very impressed with both of them and really appreciate their willingness to serve on this, and going to be one of our connections, or our only connection to the school and what's going on. So thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.
Good. Our next order of business, or at least point of discussion, is the open space signage replacement status. At one of our meetings, first off, I didn't realize how expensive signage is, okay? And I know we had tabled a motion at one point because we were trying to look at a certain amount of money in order to determine, first off, how much. I contacted Derek Thiel, township manager, who said that we generally have been using MI signage from I believe Southgate, off of North Line. And so I made some calls to them, and they were certainly willing and able, but they generally have like the template that's generally been used throughout the township in that regard. Total package for one of the signs that we're most accustomed to is $900, okay? And again, if we have our DPS install it, installation is like $230. That's built into that $900. So let's say every average sign that we would, let's say, wanted to replace would be, $670. Mr. Geist made a astute observation, and Ray, you may want to mention what you were talking about in terms of the signs themselves, and then I'll turn it over to Zoe to talk a little bit about.
What I was wondering about is we've looked at the signs themselves, but if we should also check the condition of the posts that they're hung on, and if the posts appear to be in good condition, we could just reuse those and hopefully reduce the cost of the total for a new sign.
Right, for a new sign. And correct, my understanding, for the post to be installed, it's like $125. So that gets to be pretty pricey when you're taking a look at some of the signs. And
Now, is that $125 on top of the $900?
yes,
Is that per post or two posts?
no, two posts.
So in reality, if they put in a whole structure, it would be a little over $1,000.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Right. Zoe, why don't you tell the audience and tell us about your PowerPoint, and included in your packet is a very poor copy of at least some of the slides that Zoe put together. So why don't you?
Okay, so with the trailheads, I didn't see any major damage to the posts that I noticed. However, there was a big difference between some of the signs, and the one that I saw that definitely needed the most work. My last page isn't here. Let me look.
I think the last
It
page is on the
was-
first page.
Yeah, it was Parkway Woods. Was very hard to see. You couldn't read it. It was definitely molding a little bit. And I noticed that with a few of the signs that the actual sign may have been weak because of the dark green pigmentation, where it's actually getting darker, may, be some water damage. So I noticed that, but majority of the ones that I did see does look like they could be fixed up with some washing and a new paint job. So that should be some good news.
The Parkway Woods one is the one right on Meridian, right by the Public Service Building, if I'm correct?
Yes, I do believe so.
And if you take a minute or two, look through your packet, you can tell some of these are in better, as she's identified, are in better shape than others. And I apologize for the small, we got a new printer and it wasn't cooperating. User error. One of the things I think we are aware of is that, and we appreciate your good work in this, and at our next meeting, we'd like you to do the full presentation so the audience can see it, and we can then act on a recommendation to purchase some signage. But it's a question of, these are like the main trailheads or the main trails that we have, okay, that we're identifying. We do know of the 602.01 acres that we have and we steward for the township for open space. There are many sites that have open space signs. So one of the tasks, and perhaps we will elicit the aid of maybe our new liaisons here, is to, between now and our next meeting, maybe see if we can't get around and divide up the territories that we have and, maybe snap some pictures and take a look. And then what I would like to do, and I would ask your input on this, I would like to at least make a proposal that, let's say, the 10 worst signs that if we're looking to expend some of our funds for signage, then we would identify the ones that are, the worst and replace those. But again, it's up to the pleasure of the board or to the commission to make that decision. Any comment or observation on that? But again, thank you, Zoe, for going out and acting on that.
I would suggest,
Those in presentation and description of condition is really helpful. And let me ask again, Bill, are these all of our signs, or are there more signs than
No,
these?
there's
more.
there's a
Right,
lot
okay,
more, right?
lot more.
There are
That's
a
what I
lot more.
thought.
These are generally like right at the trail. And then we've got two types of signs, okay? One of them are the big signs that you see in the PowerPoint here that identify this is open space, and it identifies the date it was put into the open space program and the acreage. But we also know that on our trails, okay, we just have a post that says, this is like, it says trail, and it identifies it as, keep it clean, or, it doesn't necessarily even say open space trail, but it's a township, as opposed to the Grosseille Nature and Land Conservancy new signs that are out there. So not to confuse the two, but yeah.
So should we be getting pictures of those signs too?
That's what I'm saying. I think what we can maybe do is try to, between now and our next meeting, is get around and see if we can identify some of those too, and add that to the PowerPoint, and then we can take a look at, okay, look at this. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
it does, but our next meeting is less than 2 weeks. Is that enough time to collect all that additional information? Or should we be looking at the March meeting in which to identify those
Oh, that'd be
10
good.
That might be better. I mean,
Give them more time.
yeah.
From, to the
Want
March
to shoot for the March?
meeting, yeah.
I still would like her to do the PowerPoint presentation.
No.
Still or no? Yeah, right.
Let's
that would
let's
be
review
fine.
what we have.
So let's review what we have, and then what we can do is we could look to March. I don't have a problem with that. I'm
I
just.
can definitely add to it in the next 2 weeks
Well, that's what
and
I'm
see what I
saying. So,
can
you
get
know,
done.
it's, and what we may be able to do is like, you know, think of your own neighborhood that you know, the area that you have. Yeah, go ahead, Bert.
Do you have a copy of the latest guide? Is that what, or,
I don't.
I didn't bring one with me, but I thought
Yeah.
if we just looked at the map and one of us, oh, you have it. So,
There you go.
so we have in the centerfold.
There you go.
So there's identifying all the open space and conservancy properties, but, so we could divide them up by, like 1 through 5,
Yes.
Ray goes and takes a picture and then just do that, and then we would cover them all. And some of them are probably hard to find a little bit.
Yes. But no, that makes sense. Okay. But what we're looking at, you're probably looking more for the March. Okay, does that make sense?
To have a more extensive review and decision for which ones we want to pursue first.
Caitlin and Alicia, do you have a copy of these? Okay, good.
Yeah, I think I gave them.
Yeah, Cliff and I are
Yeah,
theoretically.
and that's on, it's on our agenda too, I might add. Okay. Any further discussion about that? Okay, so we're looking at March.
I'm
And
sorry for doing that.
Of course.
yeah, very much so. And again, we'll look forward to seeing it in our next meeting. We have been approached, and I think everybody got this in an email, I think, that we sent with pictures. I forwarded and it's the green sheet in at least the cover page in your packet. And I'll read it into the minutes, or at least read it into that we've been approached by some private individuals and particularly Mr. Bill Vollenweider, who lives on East River, which is kind of adjacent or kind of kitty corner from the new trail that is the connector from East River. And I'll just read this. It says, there's a concrete bridge that recently completed nature trail passes over. It's located approximately 200 yards from the entrance of the trail access on East River Road. The bridge is in a state of disrepair and it continues to deteriorate. A national company, Pullman Corporation, has graciously offered to repair the bridge as a public service project. Neither the Township of Grosse nor the Open Space Committee would incur any costs. The entire restoration of the bridge would be borne by Pullman Corporation and private donations. Most of the restoration would be cosmetic with some small foundation repair. In addition to the restoration, a small sitting area with benches could be added. This would provide a very nice and pleasant respite for any tired hiker. Plans could include planting foliage and flowers. If you have any questions, please contact Mr. Vollenweider or email him at that address. I had a couple of questions, and that's why maybe this was not as an action item, and I perhaps will defer to Mr. Bloetscher on this one. It's a question of the proposal. The proposal such as this needs the approval of the Township Board, okay? And then secondarily, it's a question of, I was looking through the ordinances. What about the placement of any kind of benches or things of that nature in open space? Would that be allowable as passive recreation? Because that's pretty passive if you put a bench in.
I would suggest the proper way to approach this would be to put the presentation in front of Derek Thiel, the township manager, and then Derek can either go ahead and pass on it, or he can refer it over to Ross Kuros and the community development, and they could take a look at it. As far as the benches, we have a number of benches on the bike path. You'll recall that There's one pretty much across from Meridian Elementary, and a number of other in memorial to or commemorating some things that have happened, people that are here. We have a couple along the airport bicycle path, so I don't see the benches be a problem, but we'd want to look at the type of material that's being used. With bicycle pedestrian, we've looked at the benches that are more available now. My recollection is they were around $1,000 a piece, maybe a little bit less, but they're plastic and have a long-term expectancy that doesn't require the maintenance. I think that would be probably the best solution on that.
Right.
Sometimes cheaper is not really cheaper, and the benches that have been along the bicycle pedestrian pathways have been remarkably resilient and stayed a long time and in good repair. So I will bring this up with Derek. I will be seeing Derek tomorrow morning, and I'll give him a copy of the flyer, and he can tell us what he wants to do, and then I can bring it up at the next board meeting.
Like a copy of this, the original proposal?
I think that would be very helpful.
Right, and I think, do we all know the bridge that we're talking about, that he's talking about?
I don't, but the description, says where it is, so,
Yeah, it is literally, if you take Park Lane in Manchester and were to walk past Mr. Stevenson's house and go into the trail, it's probably 70, 80 feet from the end of the road, and make a left, and you'll come upon it, Mandy, in probably 4 minutes, 4 minutes. And it is
This
an
bridge.
old,
Bridge, yeah.
yes, it is an old cattle path at one time, as I understand it. And that bridge appears to me to be at least 70, 80 years old. And while it's in decent repair, I think it's one of those things that you need to do the cosmetic work so we don't end up having to do a lot of structural work later on.
Right.
Fortunately, the heaviest load on there is probably a lawnmower or some kind of light equipment for spreading wood chips and things like that.
Right.
But it's very worthwhile to take the walk back there, probably in April when things are a little bit drier, though.
Prior, right
And
now.
then,
I'm not so sure if this was built like by the WPA during the Great Depression or
Right.
later, okay? And I guess that's maybe another question, but again, it's still pretty sturdy, functional. It's just like it is in a state of disrepair. I mean, there's some graffiti on it. So I think the thing I think is very attractive to, when I first sent this out to the committee, is that it's one of those public-private partnerships that we're trying to, nurture. So if we can get, more of those, and we generally have seen those, for example, with the bicycle pedestrian path, where you had, government entities, private individuals, and, public entities making, making the path from the end to grow to the nature area. So that's a classic example.
Two other things to follow up with that. There is virtually an identical bridge that is a couple hundred feet south of Manchester on the west side of Meridian. And you can see it during this time of year when the foliage is down, and that was part of the original path that crossed Meridian and went all the way to East River.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and the other thing is to follow up on what Bill has said, is when we look at some of the scout activities that have been going on over the years, and we have Enzo right now who's preparing, and I believe has been down at the township looking at permits and things for his project. As soon as we can have the new bridge over the thoroughfare canal at Meridian, then I expect in the springtime he'll be able to proceed with that, a path that will go back due west pretty much to the thoroughfare canal with an overlook. And that is his Eagle Scout project. And he's pretty anxious to get started on that, as we are, but there's only about probably 4 or 5 inches of mud between now and then.
Yes,
So,
yeah, it's more like,
but that, I think, is a good example of what Bill is referring to. And then the Scouts also went in and did a rather significant cleanup. I believe we filled most of a 30-yard dumpster
absolutely.
with an engine block and toilets and tires and a lot of other things there. So that's a good example, and the scouts have been very, very, very helpful with that, so. And this is just absolutely great.
Yeah,
I
this
agree,
is,
I
it's a
agree.
great offer.
I guess I'd like to add a
yeah.
couple things, is
Go ahead.
that, one, we should contact the Historical Society and see if they have information related to the history of, maybe not this specific one, if they do, that'd be great, or any of them in general, and then perhaps work with them or somebody to set up a sign there, a little with a QR code that would take you to a web page that would explain some of the history behind, this bridge, or these types of bridges that existed on the island. And the second point is the Land Conservancy is looking at some benches for outside their resource center on Macomb Street. And so I can contact them and find out who they're working with on purchasing that, and perhaps that's something,
Right.
we can investigate and see whether that's something that would, work for us too.
Right. Good. Anybody else on that?
Well, the benches on the bike path have lasted so long because aren't they they're I don't know, they look like wood, but they're synthetic, they're plastic.
They're like
And they're
recycled,
so
I think.
sturdy,
Mhm.
and the signs have lasted, and the benches, I imagine they're pretty expensive, but they would be worth the investment, one at a time, perhaps.
The Presbyterian Church has a very active, enthusiastic recycling director. And one of the things that was presented to me some time ago was recycling. And there was a company, I believe, in Indianapolis that if you take down so many pounds of plastic,
Yeah,
they will go
yeah.
ahead and make
Right.
that.
St. James is
Yeah,
doing
St.
that too.
James was
yeah.
looking at that too.
I think it is, yeah, it may be. I know that the church was very active in that, and it's just a matter of getting it down there and then picking up the bench and that, so.
Right.
But the price, I recalling, was somewhere around $700 if you bring the plastic, so those things have lasted a very,
Ever.
very long
Yeah.
time and are still in very good
I know,
condition.
they're still in really good shape, so.
Good. Anybody else on that? Okay. So yes, I will contact the township manager and Mr. Quiro to,
I can do that tomorrow. I'm gonna be seeing them anyway.
I'll give you the original proposal.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, very good, with pictures. Awesome. Just a couple of quick things on the trail maintenance update that we were talking about before. Right now, as you know, it's pretty much underwater and it's in pretty tough shape. But we did a couple of things. We had expenditures this past early January there was an oak tree south of 8th Street that we had to take down. It was on a person's property, and there was a fear that was going to fall onto his home, so that was taken care of. There was a dead tree near 8660 Voigt Street on the north end that also had to be taken down. And then when we went through the Ferry Gauge Trail in the fall, and we went back and unfortunately we went back when all the leaves were down, and it was kind of a little tough to identify. But TNT identified, and we marked them, the ones that for sure we were going to have them take down. So they took down 9 trees in the Ferry Gauge Trail that were perilous to people that were using the trail. So they took down that, and that was and if you take a look at your one packet, that's on the last page of the budget information. And that is, and I'll refer back to this document a little later. But so for the month of January, we spent like $6,650 taking trees down out of our maintenance fund. Any questions on that? Other than that, I think, are there anything else in terms of the trails that we are, no other
Well, on the thoroughfare trail, I did notice, I think it was 2 trees that were actually fallen on the trail. So I don't know if
Just recently? I
yeah,
mean,
in the fall, when we went and looked out
Okay,
at them.
all right. I don't know if they've since have been taken
Which,
down or.
I'm sorry, which
Just
trail
a
was that?
Thoroughfare.
Oh, the bird sanctuary trail?
The bird sanctuary,
Yes, the
right.
bird sanctuary.
Mhm. Okay. We'll have to check that out. Anything else on trail maintenance update, other than just realizing that that's, so we've acted on that and we've gotten that taken care of?
Bill, the street that the, was it 7th Street that?
Eighth
Street?
Street, yep. And that was taken down. Our next discussion item is a guide to the natural areas of Grosse, and their update on that. Bert, I can defer to you, at least,
Well, there's no update to report, so.
okay. I do know, we did have, and I think Mandy's gonna talk about this, that we did have a meeting with Paul Glure, the president of the Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy, and it was a very good meeting, but I won't steal your thunder, Mandy. But one of the things he said that we as both the Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy and the Greenways Open Space Committee needed to do is to update the natural areas of Grosse. And we did say that Bert and Cliff are working on that in terms of updating. The other thing I do also know is that we have some large poster size copies of the map that need to be updated too. So the map that is included in this document, and we've got a pretty good size, a couple of those, I think that the Nature and Land Conservancy purchased originally. That they were, so we have some copies of that, but that we need to do that. So because we know that they've added some property, and so have we.
Yeah,
So,
things have changed since
yeah,
then.
and so things have changed. Good. Anything else on that, other than we're gonna be looking to get that taken care of? The next item on our discussion is the February 6th meeting, and I do apologize for having to reschedule this meeting, but thank you all for coming, and we were able to do that. But our next meeting is scheduled for February 6th, and the only reason why, I was debating whether or not, okay, well, let's not have that meeting, we'll just have one in March, but we have a number of items that we have to take care of, just in terms of action items, but also I do know that we have to set our dates for all of our meetings for this next cycle from, 2024 to 2025, so that's one of the items that'll be on our agenda next meeting. We have to look at our budget that we have, and we have to, because those all have to be adopted at our March meeting for the end of March, because we begin a new fiscal year April 1st. And then we also have to look at our goals that we established for this year, and then, and make an assessment as to how successful we were. And then we give that report to the township board. So, yes, we're going to have a February meeting. We'll start off with a presentation by Zoe and whatever we have in that regard, and we'll get to make sure that we have that all set up. So we're going to need a laptop and whatever else. Get that taken care of. But any questions or any concerns about the February meeting? So yes, Mr. Geis, you'll have to turn the minutes around quickly.
Yeah,
Good.
Thanks.
All right. Any other discussion items or anything else for discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, since we were talking about the budget, and I know we don't have an answer here, but, excuse me, at our last meeting, when we had the year-to-date expenses
Yes.
tabulated through October 31st, it was over $17,000. But based on the sheets we get today, at the end of December 31st, that total is now a little over $15,000. And then January with the 6,000 brings us up to the year-to-date of $22,111.
That we have spent.
But my question is, that somebody asked is, why was it 17,700 in October, and only 15,461 at the end of December.
My guess is twofold. Number one, it may not be a guess. Number one, we receive either donations from.
No, I'm not talking about the donation. That's a separate line item. Sorry to cut you off, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for that.
You're talking about,
You take a look at total expenditures, 12/31, it's 15,461.32.
okay, I see that.
And
And then now with the addition of,
now, at
it's now 22,
the last meeting we had,
right,
where it was through October 31st, the total expenditures to date was $17,746.32. So there's a reduction of over $2,000 between the end of October and the end of December on expenses.
I'm trying to find my October.
And so I am a bit confused by that.
No, I hear you.
Anyways, that's something we can't answer here. I don't believe that's something that
Right.
should be.
Well, I will follow up
Yeah.
with Karen Johnson, who generally supplies this with us, and double check why there's a discrepancy.
Any reason to ask, just make sure everything's in order, because obviously we're coming close to the end of the fiscal year, and we'll have to be establishing budgets for,
Next year. For this next cycle.
come April 1st, so.
Okay, no, I will check on that right away. Anybody else? Anything else?
But again, I'm sorry to
No.
dominate this, but just to be clear, that come March, we need to vote on a budget for the next coming fiscal
Correct.
year.
Correct.
And officers, is that also done in March, or do we do nominations in February?
You nominate, we can do it in March when we do the budget recommendation of the Township Board.
Right.
You would also want to nominate the
Okay.
chair at that point, Mr. Geist, if
Yep.
that, we don't need to do the secretary. No, I'm thinking you'd be a good chair.
Absolutely.
Well,
But,
we can table that discussion for another time.
Okay, but no, we do need to make
Okay.
a chair recommendation to serve for the
Yes, that's one of the things.
24-25.
I just didn't know if we need to do that over two meeting periods and add a nomination, then a vote, or if we can do it all at once.
No, we can do it.
We can do that, and possibly, if you wanted, we had enough information together. And again, if Karen is not available, Theresa is now the finance director, and she certainly has all of the resources and the information there. So in theory, we could do this at the February meeting. It's only 2 weeks away.
Right.
As opposed to the March meeting, but we meet so early in March anyway, the first week.
Right.
That's not going to be a problem. That would certainly be plenty of time to send it to the board.
Good.
Time for the annual report.
Right, exactly.
Would.
Anything else?
You should think about this, Ray.
Very good.
You're
Okay.
thinking about it, aren't you?
You know we are on the
Yeah,
air.
you are. I know, that's good. You do a fine job. We do have an action item, okay? And one of the action items is to approve the Grosseale Schools Liaison Team consisting of Caitlin Robinson and Alicia Shelton. So do I have a motion
So
from
moved.
the floor? Moved by Mr. Geist.
Second.
Second by Ms. Loveday. Any discussion?
I'd like to have the ladies come up and introduce themselves, go to the microphone, and then we could take a vote on that, if that's possible.
Sure. Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to do this.
That green button's not on, or if that green light's not on, there's a button right there.
It's on.
Did I know? There we go.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Alicia Shelton. I'm on the school's cross-country team and soccer team. I grew up in the woods, and I really enjoyed that. And I live by the church woods, and they're at risk of being torn down. That's a big concern for me, so I'd like to help that out by being here. Hi, thanks for having me.
My name is Caitlin Robinson. I am on the golf team. I've lived in Grosseale since I was 2, so as long as I can remember. And me and my family, we love going hiking in the woods, letting my dog run around, and always see like things that can be fixed in the woods, and I thought that this would help with it.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. Any discussion?
Well, I would just, I really like their comments. I grew up in the woods off of West River, and that's why I'm here tonight, because of my childhood growing up in the woods. I grew up on West River between Ferry and Parkway, and we owned acres behind the house, and all of that property behind us all the way to Ferry and Parkway, we lived back there. And that's why I'm here too, so I really appreciate where you're coming from, and I'm so glad you're here to help maintain the woods.
Good. Anybody else? All those in favor of the approval of the Grosseille Schools Liaison Team, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good. So welcome. So I told them that they can have a choice of either side to sit. Okay, usually this gets pretty crowded up here, but I think there are two seats at each end here, and that's not necessarily the little kids table. Okay, because I know the township manager sits at one end, during regular meetings, and the assistant clerk sits at the other. So I mean, those are seats of importance, okay? And we look forward to, because it's one of our goals this year, and probably all years, to increase the involvement of the schools in our open space work. So, good, so welcome. Now we'll put you to work. Okay. Speaking of schools liaison, Zoe, do you have any, I know that you've already spoke on at least the trailhead items, but do you have anything else that you'd like to report on?
I don't have anything I'd like to report on. However, with the new liaisons here, we used to, at Grosseille High School, have an Earth Day, and was wondering if maybe we could look at doing something similar like that again, where we have activities and like information sessions and games.
Yeah.
Absolutely. April 22nd is a Monday. So we'd have to talk to obviously your teachers that are involved, but we can make that and again, it's not necessarily just a high school event. We can make it a district-wide event, okay? So we should be in conversations with the superintendent and the principals of the school and the teachers that we can.
I also think the Kiwanis has sponsored some.
They do their cleanup. They do their cleanup then, right.
And whether the Nature and Land Conservancy would want to be a participant in some fashion.
Right.
In
I'd encourage that
2020,
too.
in 2020, I had worked with the high school, and Paul Gross, he's now retired, the meteorologist for Channel 4. And he is pretty much an expert on climate change. And I had heard him speak at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Birmingham. And, of course, that got canceled because of COVID. But that was the focus of that attempt. And, it would have been, like an assembly for the school students. And we ended up having a Zoom meeting with the Conservancy that focused on climate change. That was how we handled Earth Day that year.
That went really well, too.
It was informative. We had
Informative.
we had some experts from Henry Ford College and
Yeah.
some other folks.
Despite the change in plans.
Right.
Right. Good. So we'll try to coordinate that with all the different environmental groups that are here. I think that would be good. Anything, Mr. Bloetscher, from the township?
No, sir, nothing.
Nothing? Mandy, from the Grosseille Nature and Land Conservancy?
Yes. So the mic is on, right? This mic is on.
Green light.
Thank you so much. My report from the Grosseal Nature and Land Conservancy is that this coming Saturday, January 27th, at the John C. Jackson Resource Center, January 27th, on Macomb Street, there's going to be a Michigan Mammals. And Michigan being a home to a variety of mammals, the focus of this program will be on mammal diversity and adaptations. Participants will learn to identify Michigan mammals using skins, mounts, and skulls. Explore how the featured animal fits into the mammal family, how its unique adaptations affect anatomy and behavior, and the diversity of the species in our state. And for any more information, you can contact the Grosseal Nature and Land Conservancy Education at gmail.com.
Amanda,
yes.
did they specify a time?
What, I'm sorry, the time, I didn't say, did I? It's 1 o'clock to 2:30, sorry.
No, thank you.
1 to 2:30 on this coming Saturday at the Resource Center. And then Sunday, February 11th, from 1 to 2:30 at the Resource Center on Macomb, there's going to be What Lies Beneath? Worms, Bugs, and Slugs. Oh, boy. My favorite things. Clay, sand, and rocks. Life depends upon this very thin crust of materials. How does it form? How does it function? How does healthy soil benefit us every day? Let's find out at this gathering on February 11th from 1 to 2:30. And that, for more information, you can also contact the Grosseal Land Conservancy Education at gmail.com. And as Bill already mentioned, there was a meeting at the Resource Center on Macomb Street with myself, Paul Glore, who is president of the Nature Conservancy, and kind of got us together on a cold Wednesday morning. Bill Stevenson and Ray Geist in attendance to discuss common interests and goals both organizations share for the future of our island home. And some of the discussion included, as already mentioned too, that Bert and Cliff are working on updating, and as Bill said, the natural spaces booklet and map, because there have been so many changes since, it last came out, acquired property, and many changes since then by both the Conservancy and Open Space. Also, a conversation about high school students, which is getting a little bit with our 2 new liaisons here at Open Space. And Mr. Glore talked to a class with, I think it's Ms. Roscoe's class. She and, hold on a minute, Isabel, Rista, and Mr. Glore went to the class to talk about the Nature Conservancy. Ms. Roscoe also brought a bunch of kids to the Nature Center on a bus. I think Bert was in attendance with those kids.
At the refuge.
At the refuge, yeah. We'll always call it the Nature Center. So, slowly we're making some more contact, and I think the Earth Day idea that Zoe mentioned will be a really good activity to involve all of us, the Land Conservancy and Open Space. And letters to the Grosseal Nature and Land Conservancy neighbors was suggested to talk to them about properties and stewardship and what group is involved with Open Space and or Nature Conservancy neighbors. Bill, do you remember more about that conversation about the neighbors?
I think
At all?
there was a concern about encroachment on, not
That's
on
right,
just open space, but also on Nature and Land Conservancy.
on both-
And then
both
one of our
properties.
problems we know is that we have 602 acres, okay, and for us to send letters to the neighbors is difficult.
Yeah.
But we also know that we have, at least the committee is, we try to divide up and steward certain regions or areas of open space, okay? And so if you see something in your neighborhood, or if you see something at your, the area that you're responsible for, you're stewarding, then obviously, to bring it to our attention, and then we turn it over to the enforcement officers.
Okay, and
So-
as far as like the trails, people are on the trails
Right.
and, properties adjacent
Yeah.
to the trails as far as damage.
Exactly. And then one of the things I know that we're also looking at is on, for all our trails, is that we're looking at some signage for rules on our trails.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I mean, that's
This
coming in
new
the spring.
signage,
That's
yeah.
coming in the spring.
Be one of the
Mm-hmm.
first things. And let's see what else. That the Nature Conservancy will share communications for the open space on our social media on the Conservancy. As long, we'll include the Open Space Committee whenever, we need some publicity. For an example, the dump the junk, when that happens in the spring, that they'll be glad to get that out, and publicize it maybe more, which I thought was a good idea. And basically, I think the tone of the meeting was, because we have so many similar goals, and our mission is very similar with the two group, is to continue to grow collaboration between the two groups. And I thought it was a really productive meeting, and I'm really glad that Paul called it.
I agree.
That
Good. Thank you. Theresa wasn't here, but she sent me a report on the welcome letters. So this is good. She said, sorry, I missed the meeting. Here's my open space letter report. She completed all of 2023 new residents and relocated residents, and which is very difficult to tell the difference in some cases, okay, welcome letters. The year total was 132 welcome letters that we sent to either new or people who have moved, relocated, that have, just to introduce them to the Greenways Open Space Committee. The total postage was over $301, so you will want to budget $400 this year for postage, so that's something we're gonna look at. We have enough labels for this full year, but we're out of envelopes and open space Greenway booklets, so that's a shocker that we are out of the booklets at this point in time, so that had a pretty good run. Marge Gape will order 200 envelopes and charge open space, so that will tell you the budget for envelopes. The labels are $40 a year, so whatever that in terms of the labeling. Not sure how to get more booklets, but we do. We're gonna, when we redo those, but then when we figure that out, we'll have that number for budgeting as well, okay, for sure. Speaking of budget, apparently John Kine stopped her and said that labor costs were also going to increase by a certain percentage, like probably 2.5%, so we should increase our budget numbers by that amount this year for township work, okay? So we can build that into it. So Mr. Geis will get you to have your sharpen your pencil and have you work on that. So that's Theresa. But 132 letters that went out, I think that's great.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
good.
So, good. Any other questions or concerns? Is there any public comment? See, the buses are still circling the parking lot, waiting for this part of the meeting. Hearing no public comment, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:55, Bert.
So move.
Okay, so moved by Mr. Geist. Second by Mr. Bonnie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Good meeting. Good.